Hi guys, welcome to Dead End Street. I'm Al. Um, the terrible news came down today that we lost David Johansen, um, 75 years old, to cancer. Apparently, he'd been sick for a while. He kind of kept it to himself and his family for a long time. Um, he's the last of the living New York Dolls. So the dolls are all gone now. David Johansen is a huge, he's a giant in the sphere of alternative music and the roots of alternative music and the roots of punk rock. Um, Certainly in the American uh, side of that. So, in celebration of everything that David did in his career, I figured we could take a look um, at his we'll take a quick look through his years with the Dolls. It's not necessarily a ranking because we all know how that ranking is going to work. But let's also take a quick look at his solo career. Um, he had four proper solo records, some other records that we'll also talk about. So let's get started here and let's celebrate uh, everything David Johansen tonight, shall we? So the four solo records. Well, before let's get started. So David also did two records with his backing band called the Harry Smiths, which were two really cool, um, for lack of a better word, cover records of material of classic blues and kind of folk stuff. Those are really cool albums. I'm not going to rate those with the four regular solo albums because I'm going to stick to the stuff that David wrote for the most part that he wrote or co-wrote. So, but if you don't know those records, check them out. It's not traditional blues. It's kind of little kind of Johansson twist to it. So it's pretty cool. All right. So number four of the solo records is going to be 1984's Sweet Revenge. I don't have this on vinyl. I only have it on CD because it's very. I found it was hard to find. It might not be anymore in the reprint age. Um, on this record, David makes a foray into all things 80s. Um, This is his last record before diving into the Buster Poindexter years, which we're not going to dive into the Buster stuff right now. Well, maybe on a different day we will. It's a little new wavy in spots. He even raps on one track called King of Babylon, which he performed on an episode of Miami Vice, believe it or not. Um, it's not an artistic high point for David, but it sounds like he had a great time doing it. So that was number four. Number three is going to be 1981's Here Comes the Night. Um, his third solo record, um, he enlists the help of Blondie Chapman, who was a longtime sideman with the Rolling Stones and the Beach Boys, and a very good songwriter in his own right. There's definitely a focus on creating a new sound for David on this album. Sylvan, his partner in the Dolls, only co-wrote one on this record as opposed to what he did in the first two, which was Bohemian Love Pad, cool track. Um, My Obsession, really cool New York style rocker. The title track, I think on this album could have been a hit if it was released as a single and got any airplay whatsoever. Suspicion, cool funky track with some synths, which are kind of strange, little intrusive in the song. Pretty good though. Um, Having So Much Fun Without You is probably my favorite song on Here Comes the Night. Great hook, great attitude, and great piano, which I'm assuming is being played by Bobby Blaine, the guy who played the keys for the Dolls back in the day. Uh, that track was written by Mr. Elliot Murphy, who also plays a nice harmonica on the closing track, Heart of Gold, which is a really cool song. Good album. 1981's Here Comes the Night. Number 2 is going to be David's self-titled debut, 1978. This record, believe it or not, is not really all that far off from the stuff with the Dolls. Got a really cool backing band on this album. Special guests on this album include Joe Perry of Aerosmith, Felix Cavalier of the Rascals. There's also 4 tracks on here that he co-wrote with Sylvan from the Dolls. Standout tracks on here is the very Dolls-esque Not That Much, Cool Metro featuring Sylvan and Joe Perry on guitar, Lonely Tenement, which is a really cool song, with an exciting violin solo by Scarlett Rivera. It's kind of a bitch, because like what David did on this record and what Thunders was doing with Jerry on his stuff and what Sylvan was doing on his stuff is not really too far off. And it just kind of begs the question, why didn't they just keep the Dolls going then? My assumption is, and I don't know them personally, I'm just a fan. It had to have been the drugs. I mean, Thunders and Jerry were in pretty bad way at the time, even though we're doing great music. But drugs weren't really DJ's bag, his work ethic wouldn't really allow to get struck down by that stuff. His Staten Island work ethic, and he was a Staten Island boy right up to the very end, wasn't he? So yeah, number 2, self-titled debut, David Johansen. Which brings me to my personal favorite solo David Johansen record, which is In Style from 1979. Co-produced by David and guitar legend Mick Ronson of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars fame. Phenomenal guitar player. This record really accentuates David's wide musical tastes, more so than his first record, which was more of like a continuation of what he was doing with the Dolls. There is a little bit of that on here. Don't be fooled by a lot of the other kinds of music that are on here. It does a lot of soul music on here, a little bit of country, a little disco, rock, plenty of rock. It opens up with the excellent, which is probably his best solo track, close to it, Melody, which I think was the lead-off single from the record, and it's the first song on the record. Has a really cool Motown like song structure to it, with excellent backing vocals from the guys. I even think that Sylvan was doing backup vocals with David on here. But it has more driving groove than you would find on a Motown track. Second track is She, which is a scorching rocker. On the track Big City, David really gets to show off his bit more of his vocal ability. He was a good singer. I know he did a lot of posturing and stuff with the Dolls, and a lot of it was frontman rock star stuff, and he was one of the best at it. But David could sing when he wanted to, when the song warranted it. The song also contains 5 tracks co-written by Sylvan, his buddy from the Dolls, including She Knew She Was Falling in Love, which is a bit of a reggae feel to it, pretty cool. Reckless Crazy, another co-written by David and Sylvan, is one of the more Dollsy moments on the record. Flamingo Road, really cool because it has Ian Hunter from Mott the Hoople fame on piano, very good piano player in his own right. Was crazy. The reviews for this record were kind of lukewarm. I think it's way better than that. I think it's a great record. I grew up with this record kind of heard Melody, the opening single on here, a lot in the house growing up as a kid. This is actually my dad's copy. Um, he thought he really liked that song. A lot of the other stuff on it was a little bit uh, more punk than what he's, you know, his appreciation is for music. So he heard me listening to Dolls, heard me listening to, T-Rex, whatever else. So he offered the record to me. He gave me this and the first Pretenders record, kind of the same deal. He really liked Brass and Pocket. A lot of the other stuff was a little bit more punky for his taste, I guess. Um, so I've got a soft spot for this record. So yeah, I think that's his best solo record. Um, let's see. Let's do a quick ranking. Why not? We have the first two records, and then you have the three reunion records that happened in the 2000s. When it was just David and Sylvan, because we had lost the other four, if you count Billy, up to that point. Okay, so at number 5, I have 2006, One Day This Will Please Us, To Remember Even This. First reunion era record. DJ and Sylvan regroup after the Morrissey commissioned reunion. Morrissey from the Smiths, if you are not well aware, Dolls are his favorite band. He's championed them for decades. Um, um, the reunion had David, Sylvan, and Arthur. Arthur Kane, bass player. Arthur passed soon after the reunion, so they enlisted Sammy Yaffa of the great Hanoi Rocks to come in and play bass in his stead. Couldn't have found a better stand-in. And Steve Conti, a great guitar player, to come in and fill in for Thunders. There's some really great songs in this track, especially the awesome Plenty of Music. I love that. Dancing on the Lip of the Volcano and Rainbow Store. Really cool song. My number 4 New York Dolls record is the second reunion record called Cause I Says So. They brought back Todd Rundgren to produce it, who produced the first Dolls record back in '73. Same lineup as the One Day record. I think the songwriting's a little bit stronger on this one, although I do think One Day sounded better, which is strange because Rundgren is usually a great producer. He produced it great. I think it has more to do with the time that it came out. 2000 were a weird time for mixing. Um, Better Than You, great track. Lonely So Long, great track. My World, all great tunes. And I think the idea with this record was to move the Dolls a bit more forward and not rely so much on the past, which I think is always good. Um, Number 3, I'm going to go with these reunion albums. I do have physical copies, but I'm in the process of moving and I can't dig them out right now. So we'll put the photos up there. I got to tell you, this record is really, really good. And it's Dancing Backwards in High Heels from 2011. The final album that the Dolls did. I telling you, I think it's kind of close to the second one. I mean, it really is really good. Um, it's a bitch they called it a day after this record because I feel like David and Sylvan's chemistry was just getting back on a roll again. They really nailed it on this record. There's not a whole lot in the way of old school Dolls on here. It's a much more of an R&B record, um, but it's great. I mean, David's vocals are among his best sounding vocals that he's done on pretty much any record. Streetcar, Talk to Me Baby, Kids Like You Don't Have to Cry. I mean, some great songs on here. Sold My Heart to the Junk Man. It's great stuff. If you're willing to open up your ears to something, I mean, if you expect the Dolls to keep recording the 1973 album over and over and over again, you might be disappointed by this. But if you expect artists to be artists, I think you'll like it. The number 2, of course, is going to be New York Dolls in Too Much Too Soon from 1974. The second and final record by the classic lineup. Uh, not as good as not as good as the first record of the not as good as the debut, but still that super sloppy, great brand of rock and roll that the dolls just love to bring. A little bit more emphasis on the 60s girl group flavor on here, but it definitely works. Um, Babylon, great track. Who Are the Mystery Girls? Classic dolls. Um, and don't forget about the Johnny Thunders fronted Chatterbox. It's a really good track on here. I think it's the only song that Johnny sang. Uh, but yeah, David's love of those 60s girl groups is definitely a full display on this record. Um, yeah, number two, Too Much Too Soon. And I mean, number one is going to be, there's my original printing, 1973's self-titled New York Dolls. Um, yeah, I, you know, you can put them in, call it proto punk, call it whatever you want. But the truth is, in the early 70s, um, the East Coast rock scene, primarily the New York rock scene, was in a funk. In the late 60s, you had the Velvets. And then there was just kind of like this black hole till the Dolls came around. And the Dolls bridged that gap between the Velvet Underground and the CBGB's punk scene, where you had, the Dead Boys, Blondie, um, Talking Heads, Television, Patti Smith. Uh, this album bridges that gap. Um, and it does more than that because it was super, super influential to all of those UK punk bands. You talk to Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols, you talk to Mick Jones from the Clash. I mean, you talk to Morrissey, you talk to, any one of those post-punk groups, they'll tell you that the New York Dolls were a huge influence. Um, you want to go into the hair metal bands. I mean, no doubt that most of those bands, those LA Strip sleaze rock bands, for sure. Maybe not the pop rock ones, but the sleaze, your LA Guns, your Faster Pussycats, your Guns N' Roses, your um, that flavor, definitely. Yeah. So not only that, I mean, this the songwriting on here for a bunch of guys who were supposedly just drug-addled and obnoxious. Um, you know, Personality Crisis, Vietnamese Baby, Looking for a Kiss, Trash, Jet Boy, Lonely Planet. So um, these songs were the soundtrack to a lot of really cool moments in my life. As much, very much so as the rest of this of David's songs here. When I was in high school, I spent a lot of time, not a lot of time, or maybe a lot of time, you know, trying to copy, David, jumping around, you know, even with my own band, um, and Johnny Thunders, both. We lost the giant, David's was a huge, huge figure on the scene of, you know, alternative and punk and whatever, you know, non-mainstream. And he should have been more of a household name. I don't know whether that weighed on him or not. I have no idea. But one can only hope that the band is all back together tonight, and New York Dolls are going to play a show tonight up there and tear it the fuck up. So yeah, that'd be cool to see, wouldn't it? So rest in peace, Mr. David Johansen. It sucks because we're this is going to happen a lot because of our musical heroes are all getting that age. So, well, guys, thanks for watching. Next time we'll see each other, we'll be on a more positive note, but this is a positive note. We celebrated everything David Johansen did in his, awesome career. What a rock star, you know. If you like the video, click like. If you like watching videos and, top 25 albums of the year, or like watching this type of stuff, watching album rankings and stuff, maybe subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and check us out on social media if you want. And we'll see you next time on Dead End Street.